Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I hope everybody's having an amazing day so far, having an amazing Friday. Today, we're going to take you all around the world of sports, talking a little bit about the Olympics. Some history was made the other day. We'll talk about two historic achievements made by some Olympians here. We'll also talk about the Hall of Fame game last night between the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans, talk about Texans, talk about some of my takeaways from that game, as well as what I'm looking forward to for the NFL season. Start our series on the AFC as we break down every single NFL team, just 34 days away from the NFL season. Cannot wait for that. And then we'll talk about our Friday MLB power rankings, post-trade deadline power rankings. We'll get through all of that and more. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with the message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But we're going to start off here with some Olympic talk. Just start off real quick with that before we get into the Olympics, as well as a couple of other stories from around the world of sports. But starting in the Olympics with the U.S., we had two historic achievements made. We had Simone Biles becoming the most decorated gymnast in the history of the Olympics. Again, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. After winning a solo gold as well as a team gold in this Olympics, she is absolutely dominating. She is the most dominant gymnast in the history of gymnasts, at least in the U.S. I mean, we talk about her. She's been in so many different Olympics. There's a reason she's the most decorated Olympian from gymnastics, because she just won a medal at 27. And while that might not sound that old in many sports years, in gymnast years, that is insane. To put it into some context, the oldest gymnast to win a medal before her was 23. 23. She did it 4 years older than that, and she is just the consensus best in the world. It's not even close. She's doing things we've never seen before. You know, these gymnasts are starting their career, their Olympic careers, when they're 16, when they're 15, when they're 14. It's incredible how her longevity and how she's been able to stay at the top of the game for this long. It's a young woman's sport. It's a young man's sport, you know, and it's super impressive that she's been able to keep this pace up for so long. So congrats to her. The other major historic accomplishment, Katie Ledecky became the most decorated woman, period, in Olympics history, with a silver medal in a team relay in the pool after dominating her competition. They might as well rename the women's 1500 to the Katie Ledecky swim, but she is incredible. Congratulations to her. Congratulations to Team USA. Taking a look at the medal count real quick, the US is winning in overall medals, but as we get to golds, it's a little bit closer, especially I mean, the U.S. has been dominating in as far as it goes to silver medals. They've got a whole bunch of silver medals. If you want silver medals, the U.S. has got them. But as far as as far as gold, they are not at the top. Team USA set another world record today in the 4x400 mixed relays as well. That happened just a couple of hours ago. As swimming is done, that means that track has started. The new world record of 3:07:41 in the 4x400 is insane. Anytime we set a world record, that's crazy. There hasn't been too many world records I've seen set at this Olympics, but it's been a crazy Olympics so far. And then before we move off of this topic, I wanted to touch on something else real quick, something in college football. College football has a lot going on right now. We know that We know that obviously the House the House settlement just went through, right? We also know that they're still dealing with all the NIL stuff. Recently, it came out today that Kentucky is going to have to forfeit some wins. Kentucky SEC program, not the top of the SEC, they're going to have to forfeit some wins due to a couple of players on the football program getting paid in 2021 and 2022. Now, the coaches apparently did not know about this, so they're not being hit with any kind of reprimand, but the NCAA is still doling out punishments. I saw in a couple comments under the article people saying stuff like, hey, why are you letting the NCAA punish you? They don't really have any power anymore, which to a certain extent is interesting. It's kind of correct too. This is the kind of the NCAA is very quickly losing power, and I don't and this isn't like a stunt to get them, but there is definitely a little bit of a weird power dynamic now, especially between the SEC and the rest and the NCAA as a whole. But anyway, the college football season is right around the corner. I can't wait for that. We'll do a couple college football predictions coming up in the next couple weeks as well. But I'll keep you updated on everything going on with the Olympic Games as over the weekend when we come back on Monday. But we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to talk a little bit about the NFL kickoff game, the Hall of Fame game that took place last night. Talk about what we learned from it. Talk about some of the new rules that I thought were really intriguing, and much more. So we'll be right back with that and everything else here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fake. I make this every day. I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up in the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I do shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out show for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that sound. Keep my waiting to be put down. Hitting your place, I'll get my sound. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit. It's stupid if you choose to live, but choose to dip. You choose to fight and lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. Feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world now? Please, Lord, give me a sign. A sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world now?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, if you're just tuning in, we just did a little bit of an Olympic update from yesterday, as well as some college football talk. In this segment here, we are going to move into the world of football, where we'll spend the majority of the rest of our show here. In this segment here, we're going to talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame game that took place last night, some of these standouts, some of the new rules that we saw, and everything that took place between the Bears and the Texans last night. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the NFL game from last night. Football is officially back. The Hall of Fame game took place, and while it might not have been your traditional stars thunderstorm, or canceled because of a thunderstorm, ended early because of a thunderstorm, this is the kind of game that does not matter. The teams know it. The NFL knows it. This was just, hey, football's back celebration, right? Once it started raining, they said, we're done. whatever. This game doesn't matter anyway. But this game did open up a couple of bigger open up a can of worms for a couple of bigger questions, right? The first and the most important question is, and the one that's going to affect the NFL season the most, is the new kickoff rules, right? We saw them in action for the first time yesterday. Last night we saw the new kickoff rules in action. The TV was very helpful with it. They highlighted that landing zone it had to be, and it wasn't super exciting. There's still obviously a couple of nooks and crannies and issues, small little kinks that they have to work out. Uh, there's a couple of other things that they need to work out as far as rules, especially starting off early. When we want to take a look at the way that it's going to be, and this is something that's been pointed out. There were a couple penalties, there were a couple touchbacks, there were a couple of flags that were called, and this is something that is going to be an issue. That's what the refs need to learn. It's a new rule for us, it's a new rule for the players, it's a new rule for the refs, it's a new rule for everyone. This is something that is just kind of taken out of a different league and shoved into the NFL, right? This is not something that, hey, we changed, you can challenge pass interference. This is a brand new play, basically, that is going to happen at least, at a minimum, 3 times a game, right? Halftime, opening kickoff. This is an important part of the game, right? And it can be a game-changing play. You can see the potential of it a little bit. Like when you're watching these plays, you can see the lanes, the possibilities for these lanes to open up. There's a lot of open space if you can get past that first line of blocking. And obviously, there's only that one line of blocking. There's a lot of room for creativity with the ability to have those 2 returners back there. You could do some trick plays, run some laterals, get everybody over to one side, throw it across field. Obviously, it's a little risky, but we didn't see anything like that happen last night. Last night was more, hey, get your feet wet, figure it out. And like I said, it was a little bit rough. There were a couple kicks out of the back of the end zone that pushed the ball up to the 30 instead of the 25. There were a couple of really short returns due to players leaving early, due to players on the defense leaving late. There was some confusion there over flags that were be called, how that would affect the play. Would they make it do it again? Would it just be the 5 yards? How that would work, as well as just the lack of an explosive return. And you can chalk that up to the fact this is second, third, fourth practice squad guys that are out there playing for this game. This isn't your Devin Hester returner. This isn't Cordero Patterson. This isn't Josh Cribbs out there returning these kicks. These aren't the guys that are going to be those super explosive playmakers that are going to be able to get around. But, this is an audition for a lot of these guys, and it's going to take more than one game to figure it out. And I think it has a lot of promise, a lot of potential. I really like this idea. I think there's a lot you can do with it. There's like sets you can run. You could probably run whole plays. But they need to figure out how to penalize people leaving early. They need to figure out how to enforce that, whether it's another whistle or something, or just something like that. That was my big takeaway from this game, was this kickoff, right? You can talk about Johnson from the Bears catching 2 touchdowns, 3 for 56 with 2 touchdowns. Brett Rippon looking solid as a third string. Maybe he ends up making the team there. I think Johnson absolutely made the team with that performance. As long as he can sort of keep up what he's doing, he should be able to make a roster spot as the Bears, who do have a very stacked receiver room. I wouldn't expect him to, be a star fantasy player or anything, with how great that Bears wide receiver room is. We talked about it yesterday. Rome Odunze as a wide receiver 3 behind DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. That is a tough wide receiver room to crack. But I feel like he absolutely made a roster spot last night. But no, this was exciting to have football back. And that's really the big thing. The kickoffs are going to be a learning curve for a lot of teams. I thought the kickers did a good job in general of making it to that zone, not kicking it over the zone. There was that one kickoff that went over the zone. Bears have a nice comeback victory against the Texans. Again, nothing really matters. It was, Davis Mills versus Tyson Bagent in this matchup. Davis Mills versus it was a bunch of backups, so it doesn't really matter all too much, but it is cool that we get a peek at the new kickoffs. And I think it has a lot of potential. Maybe it's not going to be as explosive as I personally think it's going to be, but I see a lot of potential in this play. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Any takeaways from the Hall of Fame game? If you disagree, agree with me. But we're going to take a quick break here. On the other side of the break, we're going to continue our breakdown of every single NFL team. Just 34 days to go until the new NFL season, just under 5 weeks from now. We're going to break down the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills, their offseason. Then we're going to take a break, talk about their schedule. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the takeaways from the NFL kickoff, the NFL preseason kickoff, the Hall of Fame game between the Bears and the Texans, where we got to see the brand new kickoff in action, as well as taking a quick look around the Paris Olympics, some updates from the first week of the Olympic Games, as well as some college football updates with the NCAA house settlement and some punishments handed out to Kentucky. In this segment, we are going to continue our series breaking down every single team's offseason, giving them a grade, as well as breaking down their schedule. Today, we're taking a look at the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we're going to get into the Buffalo Bills today. The Bills have had a rough offseason, to put it gently, right? Obviously, there's still hope here. This is a team that won their division last year, kind of snuck into winning that division, but they still have one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league in Josh Allen, the second best quarterback in the league, in my opinion. They have, a solid group of weapons. It's not nearly where it was last year. The defense could surprise some people. They lost a lot, especially in the secondary defensively, and that's what we're going to focus on, as well as the draft. It wasn't the most exciting draft that the Bills could have possibly had. The Bills we're going to break it down, but I did not love their offseason, and it might be one of if not the least favorite off seasons for me. And we'll start with their established players before we get into the draft here, right? established players that are gone, no longer on the team. Starting on offense, the most high publicity guy, Stephon Diggs, traded to the Texans for practically nothing, right? Now the Texans do their own thing with him, make it a 1-year contract, which to each their own, I guess. Not really a move that I would have done, but you're losing a guy, the Bills are, that, has made all 4 years he's been a part of the organization, has made a Pro Bowl. He's been a huge part of your offense, has been part of the whole Josh Allen takeover of the league. It kind of coincided with each other. And now you're left with rookie Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, and, Curtis Samuel as your wide receivers. It's not exactly a terrifying wide receiver core. You also lose Gabe Davis, who was maybe the most up and down player in the league, so it's not necessarily the biggest loss, but it is a loss considering the state of the wide receiver room. You still have James Cook, who I am a James Cook believer. I will die on that hill. I think he's really, really good. He hasn't quite put it together yet, whether that be the workload in Buffalo with Josh Allen being such a massive part of the run game, or, being overshadowed by some of those receivers. Also, Dalton Kincaid is there. He had a great breakout rookie season last year. I'm a big fan of him as well. The offensive line took a bit of a hit. They lost center Mitch Morse. He's a little older. They were able to replace him with Connor McGovern, so it's not going to be too bad. They still have their best offensive lineman in Deion Dawkins, who they gave a big extension to. But defensively, I think, is where they lost the most. We want to talk about what was one of the best safety duos and one of the best secondaries in the league. You had, when healthy, Tre'Davious White, who no longer with the team. He's now on the 49ers, I believe. You lose Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde in the offseason. There's just not much left. This was a vaunted secondary just a couple of seasons ago, and I know that the secondary gets old, it gets expensive, but these guys, they weren't really showing signs of decline. And I know the big reason for this is the Bills needed to stay below the cap. Josh Allen's big money kicked in this offseason, and it made it hard, which is, kind of the thing that we're talking about with the Dolphins signing Tua, all these teams giving huge contracts out to quarterbacks that I don't know if they really deserve those contracts. But that's a whole nother conversation, right? The Bills over here frankly isn't. This is a Bills team that's been so close. It's been so close. They let Leonard Floyd walk. They were able to, bring back Deion Dawkins, like I said, but that's really the big thing that they were able to do. And if you've been listening to strategy, the Bills had a team, had money, pay all these guys, which is unfortunate, which is why they had to cut a lot of them. But it's a loss. Now, getting to their draft was interesting. They do end up getting that big name receiver that they want in Keon Coleman, and all signs to point to him being great. They made a bunch of trades. They end up giving their pick in the first round to the Chiefs. That turns into Xavier Worthy, and that could end up biting them in the butt as they as the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes and have been the thorn in the Bills' sides. The reason that they haven't been able to make a Super Bowl with this roster, with Josh Allen, you grab Cole Bishop, safety, Wayne Carter, Ray Davis. This isn't a draft class that blows you out of the water. In their draft class here, you're not going to have too many starters, right? You're going to have Keon Coleman. But you're not. But as far as defensive starters, you do go out and you get a couple of these guys that you expect, to go and play good defense. But it's not a super inspired draft. It's a tough look, and I don't want to grade them too harsh because they are in a tough position. They are in the kind of position where they didn't have the money to spend to go out and re-sign their guys. They didn't have the money to spend to go out and, sign that big free agent that would have pushed them over the top. But a lot of that is on their previous moves. I mean, signing Von Miller to that big money when he was basically going to retire, that money is still on the books. Josh Allen's big contract, I understand. Moving off of Stephon Diggs to a certain extent, I understand. You're saving the money there. But there had to be a better way than gutting the whole defense. There had to be a better way. I don't know what it would have been. I'm not in that GM office, and I don't have their salaries pulled up in front of me or what it would have been. But there had to be a better way to get underneath that cap. As far as giving them a grade, I am just really not a fan of what they did. And again, I'm going to try not to be too harsh on them. I'm not going to give them an F because it's circumstances that are foreseen. We knew that they were going to hit the cap wall hard, but there's other teams that have hit the cap wall hard and done a better job. I look at the Saints, for instance. They have been inside of the cap wall. They have been unable to do anything. Every single offseason, they have to restructure everyone, push signing bonuses, push salaries back 30 years into the future or whatever they're doing over there. There's ways around this. They need to work with the players. I'm going to give the Bills a D minus for their offseason. They only lost. They didn't gain anywhere, in my opinion. At best, they stayed the same. And that is not the situation you want to be. This is a Bills team that, didn't perform its best in the playoffs. They won a playoff game, but it wasn't their best. They almost lost that first round matchup. They ended up, losing in the second round there. This is a team that needed to improve if they wanted to win with Josh Allen. And I love Josh Allen. I do. I think he elevates everyone around him, but this team isn't good enough to beat the Chiefs. They won 11 games last year with a schedule that's easier. Vegas has the line set at 10.5. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we're going to go over everything that they did every single game, and we're going to give them a grade for their season, give them a record, for their upcoming season, and everything surrounding that. We'll see if they hit that 10.5 win mark. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found. For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the Bills offseason, a disastrous offseason in my opinion. I gave them a D-, the worst grade I've given out so far. We're going to take a look here at their schedule. Give them a record, for their schedule this season. It's a little harder than last season. They got worse in the offseason. We'll see how much that affects them. They were an 11-win team last year. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Bills season preview. The Bills, like I said, had a not very good offseason. We just broke all of that down. Very few positives. This is an AFC East division that, this is going to be a little bit, and when I say a little bit, I mean it's going to be a harder schedule than it was last season. They have to take on the likes of the Dolphins twice, the Ravens, the Texans, a healthy Jets, hopefully, with Aaron Rodgers twice. They have to take on the Chiefs, the 49ers, the Lions as well. And, you could throw the Rams in there if you want, if you're just doing a playoff teams. 10 of their 17 games are against teams that made the playoffs last year. And, the remaining 7 aren't against slouches necessarily. I mean, 8 of them are against playoff teams. The Jets didn't make it last year. The Colts I think are going to be good. The Seahawks are good. The Jaguars are good. This is not an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination. They do have a bye week 12, a solid place for a bye. Maybe you want it slightly earlier than 12, but it's not really in the realm where you need to start complaining. They'll be ready for a stretch, an end of season stretch where they could turn it around. But like I said, it is a tough schedule. We're gonna go through it game by game, starting off with Week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. In this game, this is a team that is, I think it's just straight up better than the Cardinals. I don't think this needs too much explanation. I'm giving the Bills a fast start here, 1-0 against Kyler Murray and the Cards. Then they head down to South Beach, Miami, take on the Dolphins in Week 2. I think the Dolphins take care of business there. The Bills fall to 1-1 early on in the season. Then they head to Jacksonville, and this one I was honestly going back and forth on. The Jaguars are a team that kind of Jekyll and Hyde you a lot of the times. They'll be looking like a solid playoff contender, and then the next game they'll look like the Jaguars of Blake Bortles times, right? Under Urban Meyer times, right? But I'm going to give this game to the Bills here, take care of business against the Jaguars. They improved to 2-1 early on in the season. Once again, their win total by Vegas was set to 10.5. Then they get a tough stretch. 3 straight road games against 3 straight Super Bowl contenders in the Ravens, the Texans, and the Jets. That is a tough stretch, especially early on in the season. Starting off against the Ravens, I think this is a game they could win, but I don't think that linebacker core is good enough to deal with that run game. I'm taking the Ravens in this one. They fall to 2-2. Week 5 against the Texans on the road in Houston. CJ Stroud, his wide receiver core, we get a Stephon Diggs revenge game. That's not going to be good against a much weaker secondary than was before. The Texans win this game. The Bills fall to 2-3. They go back up to the Northeast in Week 6 to take on the Jets at MetLife Stadium. Aaron Rodgers healthy this time. I'm giving the Jets a win. That Jets defense alone might be enough to do it. We saw it happen last year at least once. Excuse me. But Aaron Rodgers is back. Garrett Wilson is ready. They have a revamped, wide receiver core, and the Jets will take care of business. After 6 weeks, the Bills are 2-4. Not a place that they're used to being. They get a little bit of an easier stretch here in week 7, 8, as they take on the Titans and Will Levis. I think they will take care of business there, improve to 3-4. Week 8 against the Seahawks. That is in Seattle. That's a long, long travel, but the Seahawks are, coming off of a couple tough games. I'm giving the Bills a win here as well. So that is after 8 weeks, they're back up to 500, well in playoff contentions. There's 3 games into the bye. If they can win 2 of them, I'd say they're in pretty good shape here. They have the Dolphins. That is at home. Week 9, I don't think it's too late in the season for to go up there and do his thing. I'm taking the Dolphins. Their speed is going to kill this Bills secondary. I'm taking the Dolphins to win this game. The Bills fall to 4-5. Then the Bills head to Indianapolis, and the Colts are a team that I don't quite understand if they're going to be good or not. We'll talk about them a little later on. I'm giving the Bills a win against the Colts here. Not That's another game that I could go back and forth on. But the Bills get back to 500, 5-5 before Week 11 matchup against the Chiefs. This is going to be a major matchup, prime time. Mahomes, Allen. But unfortunately, the billing isn't quite the same with the fall off that the Bills have, and I think this is crazy to say it, but this is an improved Chiefs team from last year. So I'm taking the Chiefs, who usually this script is flipped. Usually the Bills win in the regular season, but I just don't think these rosters are that close anymore. After that tough game against the Chiefs, they now fall to 5-6, and they get a much needed bye. Week 12 bye, prepared coming out of the bye against the 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers are up next for the Buffalo Bills. In week 13, they are 5-6 on the season so far. And I don't think they beat the 49ers. I think the 49ers are still the best team. The Chiefs and the 49ers are still the best two teams. We'll see if they make the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that later on. But the 49ers spoil off the bye for the Bills. They fall to, 5-7. Weeks 14 to 18, it gets the schedule kind of calms down a little bit. Now, that's not to say it gets easy, because this is definitely not an easy schedule. They're playing a first place schedule. It's not easy, but they get the Patriots twice, and that definitely helps, as well as the Rams, the Lions, and the Jets. So, doesn't get super easy, but it's easier than going, Chiefs, Niners back to back. But Rams in week 14 in LA, I think they take care of business there, improve their record, and they're on a little bit of a road streak. They head up to Detroit. I think they're good enough to make this is going to be a good game. I'm giving this one to the Bills. The Lions are really good, but I'm giving this one to the Bills. Then they head back home and take on the Patriots, and we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be for the Patriots then. It could be Joe Milton even. I'm giving this one to the Bills. So 3 straight wins with 2 weeks to go. They are now back to a game above 500. First time since week 3 this season that they are above 500. They get back there. If they win these next 2 games, they have a 5-game win streak, potentially heading into the playoffs, as they currently sit at 8-7. The Jets are next on the schedule, and this is another game I went back and forth on. I'm giving this one to the Jets. This is in Buffalo, but this is a cold weather team as well with the New York Jets. So they fall to 8-8, and week 18 against the Patriots. They're not out of playoff contention entirely. Some other stuff could happen around the AFC. They're playing against the Patriots. I'm giving the Bills a win. They finish off their season at 9-8, falling just under that 10.5 game mark that Vegas has set for them. I have them missing the playoffs. It's 2 games dropped from where they were last season. 2 games dropped from where they were last season. Of course, an 11-win team last year. Let me know what you think. We're going to take, but I have the Bills finishing 9-8 and missing the playoffs this season. Again, nothing against Josh Allen. This team got worse. They didn't have a lot of options with the cap. They had an awful offseason. And I think we might see some coaching changes maybe after this. But we're going to take a quick break, come right back to finish off our show with our Friday MLB Power Rankings, the post-trade deadline Power Rankings. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you're just tuning in, we just went over the Bills. They had a bad offseason, to put it lightly. I gave them a D- for all of their cuts. Not many additions. I did like the extension of Deion Dawkins, though. But we also went over their record. I have them going 9-8 and missing the playoffs. Probably some coaches getting fired there. Maybe a GM change. We'll see what happens with the Buffalo Bills this season. I'm not super optimistic about it. We're going to close off our show today, though, talking a little bit about the MLB. It is post-trade deadline, and it is a Friday, so that can only mean one thing. We have our post-trade deadline MLB power rankings. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get right into the MLB power rankings. As we see right here, updated, fresh off the presses as of today, our MLB power rankings are official Sports by GSMC Podcast Network MLB power rankings right here for you to take a look at. Not too many changes at the top. Obviously, the trade deadline wasn't as exciting as a lot of people wanted it to be. That includes me. I was expecting more moves from some of these guys, some more major league moves, but there are a couple guys that did move up or down based on what they did at the deadline at the major league level. Phillies couldn't move up. I probably would have if they were at 2 with what they did. They addressed all of their needs. I thought they did a really good job. The Phillies are sitting at number 1 still at the MLB power rankings as of this week. The Orioles stick at number 2. Their moves were kind of neutral, but calling up guys like Mayo and Jackson Holliday, who hit his first career home run. It was a grand slam all the way to Utah Street, which is crazy for your first career home run. Congratulations to him. Orioles stay at 2. The Dodgers stay at 3. I almost moved them down in favor of the Guardians, who currently hold the number 1 seed in the AL right now. Congratulations to the Guardians. They made some moves, adding Lane Thomas. I thought there was a little bit of an overpay there. It's not a super sexy name, but he'll hit for you. He'll play some solid defense. He led the league in outfield assists last year. So he's got a bit of an arm bat out there in right field. At number 5, the Yankees. I love the Jazz Chisholm edition. It's paying immediate dividends. His power is there. He's a fun player. He loves playing under the lights. But they stay there at 5 for now. At 6, the Brewers move up a spot. I think I just had the Twins a little too high before. They move up to 6. The Padres move up 2 to 7. The Padres are on a roll right now. They're 9-1 in their last 10. They weren't super active as far as adding bats at the deadline. They added some relievers. They have maybe the best back end of the bullpen in the entire league now, with 3 guys that could be closers at any given night. That 7, 8, 9 is going to be great. If they can just get there, it is going to be tough to score runs against the back end of that bullpen. They move up to 7. The Astros sit pretty at 8. They continue to just win baseball games, so there's no reason to move them out of there. The Twins fall 3 spots to 9. I was expecting them to have a bigger deadline. They didn't do anything, so they're going to fall a little bit for that. The Braves sit at 10. They're a good team. There was a scare there where the Mets passed them for a second, but they continue to crawl back. The Braves stay at that 10 spot. The Mets, just mentioned, sit at number 11. The Mets have been really good since the beginning of June. Maybe the best team in baseball since then. They weren't super aggressive at the deadline either. They added a bat in Jesse Winker. He's a nice bat to have. He doesn't add too much defensively, though. But this is a Mets team that, if they continue to play like this, are serious threats in the NL. The Royals were slumping. They climbed back 2 spots from 14 to 12 as they've gotten hot again. They made a couple moves at the deadline, added a bat or two, added some bullpen arms. I liked what they did. It was, again, there were a lot of overpays this deadline, but they move up 2 spots. The Mariners have been starting to hit since Randy Arozarena came back, or since they traded for Randy Arozarena. They move up 2 spots. They're tied with the Astros right now. That's going to be a tight race to watch heading into the down the stretch, as we only have a couple months left of baseball now. The Cardinals drop a spot to 14. They've been struggling a little bit. They made some key moves at the deadline, ended up getting Eric Fetty. I love that for them. They needed to get an arm, another starting pitching arm, and Eric Fetty has been playing great baseball. So they move down a spot to 14. The Red Sox have just, been slowly falling back down to earth. We talk about a team in the Boston Red Sox who, they were just chilling at 500 the whole season. They went on a little bit of a win streak here. The Red Sox are slowly starting to get back to that 500 mark where they love to be. They're currently 6.5 games back of the Yankees and the Orioles. Just a little bit back of the, a little bit further back in the wild card race than a couple of these other teams. They fall 3 spots to that middle position at 15. At number 16 on our MLB power rankings, we have the Arizona Diamondbacks. They climb, 1 spot up in the rankings. They've been getting better. They've been getting healthier. They've been starting to hit. They destroyed the Nationals earlier, just a couple in their last series. They've been really good. Diamondbacks move up a spot. The Rangers, their opponent in this World Series, move down a spot. They've just been fine. Rays at 18. I like the moves they made. I like adding Christopher Morel, adding a bunch of young arms. They move up 3 spots. The Pirates, Giants, and Reds, I did not love what they did at the trade deadline. They didn't add when I think they should have, or they didn't sell when I think they should have, but they've just been kind of sitting at the same spot where they had been before, so they all move down 1 spot here for the Rays. The Cubs stay at 22. Not much to say there. They add Isaac Paredes. I don't love that move for them, but, it's not the worst. The Nats sell. They get killed, give up 2 walk-offs. They stay at 23 because I still think they're better than the Blue Jays and the Tigers, who really are the only 2 teams that I think could have moved up. The Blue Jays sold, the Tigers sold, so did the Nats, and I think they're all going to stay at their same spot because of that. The Blue Jays stay at 24. I wish they would have sold more. I understand not doing it, but I really, really wish that they would have just said, screw it. We're going all out. We're selling Vlad. He's having a great season, a resurgent season. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get years. He has years of control left. We're gonna give him up for a haul. But they didn't do that. The Tigers didn't get the return I think they should have gotten for a guy like Jack Flaherty. But they do sit pretty at 25. The Angels lose Mike Trout, and that sucks. Mike Trout was on the path to come back. He had a setback in his rehab, tears his meniscus again, needs surgery again. It might be the biggest what-if story in baseball. He's already one of the greatest of all time, but can you imagine what his numbers would be like if Mike Trout was healthy? It's a little sad to think about, but he is incredible at baseball. I wish him a quick, speedy recovery, and I wish he can stay healthy for at least 1 more season in the MLB. A full season. At 27, we have the A's. They weren't as active as I thought they'd be. They did make a couple of moves, especially down the stretch of that deadline, but they sit at 27. At 28, we have the Rockies. The Rockies and the Marlins have been battling for that 28-29 spot. I'm keeping it the same this week. They didn't do much. I loved the Marlins deadline, but it doesn't help them now. It helps them in the future, and I think they definitely got worse right now. The White Sox stick at 30. 17 straight losses, guys. What are you doing? What are you doing, White Sox? 17 straight losses. I cannot understand how you get that bad. They're on pace to be the worst team in the history of modern baseball. That is an insane stat. That's not supposed to happen. But the White Sox, they might do it. They really might do it. They lost the trade deadline, I thought, by holding too tight to their pieces, and they're bad at baseball. That's a double whammy right there. Not where you want to be. But those are my MLB power rankings. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with, what you think I should change. If the Phillies should be number one, if someone else should be up there, if anyone else should crack that top five. We've had that same top five kind of shuffle around literally all season long. Let me know what you think of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I hope everybody pays attention to the Olympics. We'll talk about that when we come back. We'll continue our AFC East coverage when we come back, and we'll talk about everything, excuse me, happening around the world of sports on Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. This has been Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. You all have a great weekend, and I will see you same time, same place on Monday. You all have a great one. Bye-bye.
Hey, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't drip yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna. Let's go. I pull up, feel like it's for me a bad day.